Grazie, 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 dai, forza Ferrari!
Ferrari's back.
Hey guys, Dre back at it once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome back to Dre TV, and this is a very special Ask Dre edition of the Dre TV series. And by the way, I could be making this a monthly thing if you guys are that curious about asking me stuff, and it could be about just about anything really. So if you guys want to see more, leave a like, leave more questions in the comments. Got it? Cool. So without any further ado, I'm going to get cracking on this one because, oh my god, there are so many questions. There are so many questions in this episode. You guys really did bring it, and I'm going to try and get through each and every one of these as best as I can. First up, okay, this is supposed to be really long as well because, like, I tend to go into detail with these questions. So we'll see. I'll see what happens and what the actual video length ends up coming to. The Rainmeister, hi Vikesh, he asked on Twitter, he asked me, how long do you think Nicky Hayden will continue before he retires from MotoGP? Let's have a look real quick. How old is Nicky Hayden? I think Nicky Hayden is 33 right now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he is 33, he's 34 in July. He just celebrated his 200th Grand Prix in MotoGP this past weekend at the Circuit of the Americas. I'm not sure how much longer he's got. I'm thinking he might do another couple of seasons. I mean, if Colin Edwards can still ride for the Forward Yamaha team last year at the age of 40, Hayden can easily go another 4 or 5 years if he wants to, and if Asbar are happy to have a guy like him, because Hayden is an extremely likable and marketable dude. MotoGP is, blatantly doing a lot of American promotion with, having 2 American races on the calendar. It used to have 3 American races on the calendar before Laguna Seca got taken off for Argentina. So there's a lot of marketing power in having a guy like Hayden in your team, and he's still a solid rider and still one of the better open class riders in the field. So why not keep him around for as long as possible? I don't think Aspar are going to cut him anytime soon, because I don't think there's going to be anyone who's a stud talent that's going to join Aspar when better teams are going to come knocking. So I think Hayden will go for another 3 or 4 years, yeah, I would say. Jack Zeno asks, will you be doing a career mode on F1 2015 next gen, or have you just decided to be a pure news YouTuber? I probably will do a career mode. I would like to give it another try, and, I've embraced being a bit more confident as an editor in recent Dre TV videos, with the addition of music, extra notes and whatnot. I'm looking forward to giving it another go. So I'm probably going to say tentatively yes. We're still not sure what the full career mode context is going to be like as well, because Codemasters are keeping that under wraps still. We've still got another couple of months before the game releases on June 12th, so we'll have to wait and see what happens, but tentatively I'm going to say yes at the moment. We're on to Facebook now, and I'm going to go from the bottom. So let's go Richard Evans, who asks, do you think the current deal going up to and including the 2018 season will be scrapped, and go back to there being just one broadcaster show in Formula 1? Probably not, unless the BBC gives up their rights, because the BBC wasn't keen. The reason the BBC stopped being live 100% of the time was because it was too expensive. They didn't like the amount of money they put into Formula 1 and they were making cutbacks. That's why they dropped their MotoGP coverage as well. And that was every MotoGP race being live as well. So, I feel like the BBC are looking for any excuse to get rid of Formula 1. And the Sky ratings are doing really well on a pay-per-view channel, or pay-to-watch channel obviously on Sky. So, and Bernie likes that. Bernie is clearly moving in that direction with Formula 1, where it's going to be on premium channels from now on. So, maybe. Depends if the BBC want to keep going or not, and if they're okay with, basically just having the one broadcaster and just having it like that. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think the BBC are going to hang on to Formula 1 much longer, to be honest, because I don't, like, what is the point of having only 10 races live? I don't see the gain in that. Nathan Green with 2 questions, you greedy sod. But I'll answer them both because I'm in a good mood. Nathan Green asking, do you think the BBC coverage of the F1 is naturally less biased because Sky because BBC has to be fair and open to all, whereas Sky, which is a paid-for service, is therefore allowed to have a more open opinion and therefore exploits it by being biased to one driver in particular. Brackets, you know which driver I'm on about. Who could that possibly be? Well, you've already kind of answered your own question, Nathan. The BBC is owned by the government, and the government, by law, they have to be impartial. And I know BBC kind of pushes that one to a degree. I mean, if you ever looked at the BBC's Olympic coverage, they were ridiculously biased towards the home nations.
Come on, Caleb. Come on, no! Come on, no! Go get him, Caleb! Go get him! Go get him,
And that's just the lowest common denominator when you're broadcast into the United Kingdom. They want their own to do well. It's kind of a natural thing with sports broadcasting. Like BT Sport, for example, are unashamedly biased when it comes to supporting the Brits. Like, they're always talking about Scott Redding, Cal Crutchlow, Bradley Smith, Sam Lowes, Danny Kent, John McPhee, etc. You know, the difference is the BT Sport just openly embraces the fact they're biased as fuck, and they're completely... And you know what? It's more enjoyable that way, as opposed to Sky, which are blatantly still trying to act like they're totally impartial when they're not. And that's how I look at it. But because Sky are privately owned and are on pay-per-view, they can say whatever the hell they want. The BBC can't do that by law because, like I said, they're owned by the British government, so they can't. Also, we had another question saying, also, do you think there will ever be a women's Formula 1 series? And why not just let them race in F1 as we know it? Well, no one's stopping... Formula 1 themselves is not stopping a woman from taking part. It's the teams that are employing these women that have the final say, whether they have a super license or not. And hell, it's going to be a lot harder to have a super license going from next year, given the changes. You now actually have to earn your place rather than being Susie Wolff. I don't think there'll ever be a women's Formula 1 series. For once, Bernie has got the right idea. Like I know people like to hate Bernie because he's Bernie, but to me, he's actually got good intentions here. He does want to give women a chance, and women also provide a bunch of really cool marketing opportunities that you wouldn't get with men. Like Susie Wolff, for example, is sponsored by UBS, and she's got a couple of really big blue chip sponsors. So, and remember, this is Susie Wolff we're talking about here, who's actually probably not that good. She's only been in like a couple of practice sessions. Her times are okay, but we're talking about practice here. So, you know, I think the thing is, where would you get the women from to take part in a sport like this? Because women like Susie Wolff and Simona de Silvestro, who are already the really, really good women out there in motorsport, going to an all-women series would be a step down. Nobody wants to be the best women driver in the world. They want to be the best driver in the world, period. And for that, I believe for them it's going to be a situation where they're going to want to race against men, the best in their field at that level. Ryan King came out of a really good idea where he said, have a women's Formula 4 series and have the winner get a guaranteed scholarship to take part in Formula 3 and see what happens. I think that's a much better idea, supporting women on a grassroots or lower level as opposed to jumping them in Formula 1 cars, because where would you get the women to take part in an event like this? It just wouldn't happen under normal circumstances. So there might be a series, but it would have to be at a much lower level because it just wouldn't work in Formula 1 and you wouldn't be able to fill a grid with 20 serviceable female drivers. It would be next to impossible. It'll be like Foxy Boxing all over again, and nobody really wants that. Owen Harrington says, make up a fantasy grid of the 2 greatest drivers to have driven for each team on the grid in the past, like Senna and Hakkinen at McLaren, Coulthard, Vettel at Red Bull Racing, etc. You could replace Manor with Jordan or a team with more famous drivers if you like. Tough question. You got to go by purely successful drivers, and I know I'm bound to get one of these wrong at some point, but if you're going for teams, so let's think about this for a minute. McLaren would definitely be Ayrton Senna and Mika Hakkinen. Lewis Hamilton had just the one championship. Ferrari would be Michael Schumacher, but then who? Michael Schumacher and Kimi Räikkönen, maybe? Felipe Massa had a good run at Ferrari. I'm trying to think back in the past here, because Ferrari's history is like a who's who of quality drivers. You could go Fangio, he drove for Ferrari at one point, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure Alan Prost did. I'm sure Niki Lauda did. But they had limited runs at Ferrari, so it's a really difficult question, and I have to give it some proper thought. I could do this for another 5-6 minutes. Owen, if you're listening, I might make a blog on the website about this instead. I just want to kind of move on, because it's kind of a really big question, and it would take me 5-6 minutes to answer. Sorry about that, mate. Don't take that the wrong way. It's a really good question. Don't get me wrong. I'd have to really do my homework on something like that. By the way, I think I answered this on podcast before as well, so look for a previous episode of the podcast on the website, harrison101.com as well. I think I may have already done this before. Connor Pink asking me, if you were offered a top seat in each series mentioned above, also including the WEC, which would you pick and why? So he's referring to F1, MotoGP, the World, and the BSBs. Formula 1, Ferrari. There's no equivalent to Ferrari. It's special. MotoGP, I would say the Repsol Honda team, because they're the best. Hell, riding against Marc Marquez would be friggin' insane. World Superbikes, I've got a soft spot for the Ducatis in that series. I love Chaz Davis on that Ducati bike. It's really pretty. So I'd go with Ducati on that one. The BSBs, probably Paul Bird Motorsport, and their Kawasaki's are pretty cool. And IndyCar, it's got to be Penske. Just being able to curb stomp the opposition and being able to drive with willpower, and Juan Pablo Montoya, Helio Castroneves, and who's the other one? Simon Pagenaud. Well, that would be pretty freaking cool. WEC, Audi. Got to be Audi. They're special. They're a brilliant, brilliant team of dudes, and Audi are awesome in that regard. Marcus Hoare, I'm sorry if I got your pronunciation wrong there, Marcus, asking me, as much as Sky have severely overhyped him, branding him the second coming of Schumi and Senna, do you think Max Verstappen is the real deal? Way too early to say. It kind of goes hand in hand with another question that Danny Brennan asked, saying, hey Dre, do you think Carlos Sainz deserves much more praise for his driving against the apparent second coming of Christ, Max Verstappen? Yeah, because I know Sky were really guilty in hyping up Max Verstappen after another solid drive in China. It's like he's pulled off a couple of flashy passes and people are acting like he's the embodiment of Christ. If Max Verstappen was 3 years older, we wouldn't be giving him this kind of attention. We're going crazy over Max because he's 17, and that opens you up to both sides of the spectrum. He could be really, really good. He could also be average. We just don't know that yet, and Max is clearly above average for his age. We've never seen a 17-year-old in Formula 1 before, and he looks like he's driven really well. But as Daniel asks, Carlos Sainz has been just as good, quite frankly. He was unlucky in Australia. He had the 33-second pit stop delay, and he was going to beat his teammate in that race. He was going to beat Max in that Grand Prix before the dodgy pit stop that he had in Australia. In Malaysia, he drove from 15th to 8th on a two-stop strategy in Malaysia. And in China, again, he was looking solid until the gearbox issue ruined his race before he even got started. So, Sainz, in my opinion, is just as good, if not a little bit better than Max Verstappen at the moment, given on early performances. But even so, it's way too early for us to be talking about Max Verstappen in this kind of context. He's had 3 races, ever, and we're acting like he's God. We all need to calm down on Max Verstappen a little bit, in my opinion. Connor Pearson asks, what do you think the midfield is going to look like in F1 over the season? Lotus, Sauber, McLaren, Toro Rosso, Red Bull, Force India. Any teams you think is going to get ahead and charge for 4th? Yeah, I think Mercedes, Ferrari, and Williams are clearly the big 3 at the moment. They're also quite far apart, further apart than I thought they were going to be. The battle for the minor points is going to be interesting because McLaren are slowly playing catch-up and they're getting better by the race, but they've still got a long way to go. Lotus looked good in China. Romain Grosjean came 7th, and that was the best that was available on the table for him. Sauber seem to have made some real progress given Ferrari's power unit gains, so they look like they can challenge the Red Bulls. Red Bull have got the money to develop over a season, and that's where I think the difference maker is going to be. Red Bull can still develop because they spend 200 mil a year on car development every year, something that the other teams just don't have. So I think Red Bull will eventually climb up and take 4th. I think Toro Rosso will come in 5th because I think they've got a very underrated car this year. It looks like Toro Rosso right now are faster than the factory team, which is quite a shocking revelation. I think McLaren will end up 6th, again, development. I think Sauber 7th, and I think Force India 8th, if that makes any sense. I think. Oh, I didn't include Lotus in that. Oh, God. Lotus might... I'd go say Lotus will come ahead of Toro Rosso. They'll split the Bulls up. So 5th ahead of Toro Rosso, I would say, because I think Lotus, again, will spend to try and improve, if that makes any sense. Mackenzie Stewart asks, what do you think about the saga involving Top Gear? I kind of already spoke about this one in the previous video, but was my Dre Talks video called The Problem of Jeremy Clarkson. So I already kind of talked about that one in length, but since then the show's been cancelled. And yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad, and I feel very sorry for Osin Timon, the producer that got a ton of internet abuse. For being an assault victim, effectively, because the report came out, Clarkson apparently beat him up for a good half minute and had to be physically restrained from attacking him further. And, you know, the guy was getting so much abuse on the internet for being an assault victim, which is just completely ridiculous. And then the story came out yesterday about Sue Perkins, the Great British Bake Off host, getting driven off Twitter as a result of getting death threats when a article had completely unsubstantiated rumours about Sue Perkins potentially being a replacement host. For me, I think Top Gear should just stay dead, but it makes the BBC way too much money for them to just drop like that. BBC was making like 60-70 million a year off Top Gear because it was on the BBC World Service. So there's no way they won't try to make another version of the show with 3 new hosts, because it makes them too much money for them not to at least try it. But it's not going to be the same, obviously, without Clarkson, Hammond and May, and I think they're all going to go off and make their own show somewhere else. Maybe on Sky, maybe on Netflix. There's a lot of rumours about that at the moment. Maybe on ITV to have their own motoring show for the first time in a long, long time. Not since the days of Pulling Power, I think, ages ago. So that's going to be something to keep half an eye on. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's sad, but totally deserved, and it's kind of shocking the amount of negative response the hardcore Top Gear fans have, because 1 million people signed a petition for them to bring it back. 1 million people. So there's 1 million people in the world, at least, who feel like it's okay to physically assault a member of the workplace as long as their precious Top Gear doesn't get touched. That makes me sad. Next up, Kwame asks, if the grid ever gets larger, which I highly doubt, do you think that F1 should split into a 3-race series in its one like the WEC, so Tier 1 for higher teams, Tier 2 for mid-table, and Tier 3 for lower teams to make it more appealing for lower teams to join Formula 1? It's never going to happen, Kwame. Like, most F1 tracks can handle 26 cars, so we would need 14 teams in Formula 1 for that to even be considered an option, and I don't see it, to be honest with you. Like, Formula 1 is a terrible friggin' investment of your money, unless you're in the top 3 or 4. Like, if you're not in that semi-decent bracket of being in the top 3 to 4 teams out there, F1 is terrible. You're going to lose a ton of money in trying to invest yourself into Formula 1 to try and win. And I just think it's a terrible idea, to be honest with you. Like, why would you invest in F1 knowing you're never going to make a return on your money? Unless you're a team like Red Bull who are just going to use it for marketing purposes. Unless you're going down that road, I don't see why that would ever be a thing. And even then, splitting tiers up is a terrible idea. Nobody wants to enter as a B team, you know? Everybody thinks they can beat the big teams eventually with enough money and resources. So, resigning yourself to a lower part of the bracket, I just don't see that as a worthy investment, or something that teams would knowingly accept, so to speak. Andre Silva asks, what is your opinion about IndyCar, and in your view, the differences between IndyCar and F1? Yeah, for those that don't know, I've started watching IndyCar this season for the first time, and I'm still kind of fresh out of it, so I can't really comment on this too strongly, because I've only seen 2 races, and one of them was kind of a joke. In that regard, because it goes in hand with another question, which I think it was Len Morrison on Twitter who asked, what's your opinion of IndyCar so far? Ignore the last race in brackets, because the Grand Prix of Louisiana was a joke. The rain completely ruined it, and the rain and the lack of draining on the Louisiana track kind of ruined the whole race, really. And Ryan Hunter-Reay and Simon Pagenaud had a hellacious accident towards the end, and the nature of the track really ruined the Grand Prix. And then you had the time limit. It was all a little bit of a mess. And being on street tracks means there's a bigger chance of getting full course cautions, and that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to IndyCar. So I might have to comment on this one later, but there's not an awful load of differences. Obviously, American coverage is American coverage. The level of driver isn't quite on the same level, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think the top 4 in IndyCar would hold a candle to the guys in Formula 1 who are in the top 4. And obviously, the aero is much more prevalent and ridiculous in IndyCar as opposed to Formula 1. Besides that, there's not too big a difference, I suppose. But we'll have to wait and see, because, my thoughts on IndyCar are, it's okay. It's just okay. And, Louisiana wasn't really IndyCar's fault. That was more just the elements and the combination of that and a poor track, really, more than anything else. But, as time goes on, I'm sure I'll warm to it further, because it's Long Beach this weekend, which is bound to be a little bit more interesting because it's Long Beach. We just had a Formula E race round there a couple of weeks ago. Sean Smith asks as well, last question from Sean Smith, what do you think would happen if all the champions of major championships, Harvick, Hamilton, Marquez, Power, Whitman, Wurz, Buemi, etc., raced each other in a car different than their own? Hamilton driving a Manor, Marquez driving a Ducati, etc. That's a really weird and long-winded question. We'd have no idea. You're asking me to basically speculate here as to what would happen if you put them in different cars. All raced in different categories. It's basically an enormous Race of Champions format, and people don't take the Race of Champions seriously in the first place. I mean, Romain Grosjean won a couple of years ago. Does that mean he's the best driver in the world in any discipline? No. It just means he was particularly good on that race weekend, and it's a convoluted mess, really. The context is completely different. For example, what would happen if you put Will Power in a Honda or Marc Marquez on a Ducati? Would he still be able to win? We're guessing. Let's not pretend like it's something different. It's completely different to everything else. So I'm not going to go down that road. I think it's all a little bit messy, and I don't like to speculate on things like this if I can avoid it. So that's just the way I look at it, really. But yeah, thanks to everybody again for all your questions. If you enjoyed it, please let me know. I'd love to do more of these, and if you've got any questions you'd like to ask me for another video, leave them in the description below, and I'll ask them in May's version of Ask Dre. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I've been Andre Harrison. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.